Welcome to the UK Travel Planning Podcast. Your host is the founder of the UK Travel Planning website, Tracy Collins. In this podcast, Tracy shares destination guides, travel tips, and itinerary ideas, as well as interviews with a variety of guests who share their knowledge and experience of UK travel to help you plan your perfect UK vacation. Join us as we explore the UK from cosmopolitan cities to quaint villages, from historic castles to beautiful islands, and from the picturesque countryside to seaside towns.
Hi and welcome to episode 85 of the UK Travel Planner Podcast. This week I'm here with Doug.
Hello.
To chat about our experiences of walks tours in London. So now this follows on with last week's episode where I chatted to Walks Ground Operational Manager in London, Charlie Bennett, which was a fabulous episode. And if you haven't managed to catch up with that, I highly recommend you go back to episode 84 and take a listen to that. We have had some fabulous times on walks tours in London. So I kind of wanted to talk about those experiences in this episode. And Doug has joined me on some of those, haven't you?
Yeah, I have. That's right.
Yeah. And I know if you've listened to episode 54 of the podcast, which I recorded last year after I'd spent some time in London, I talk about my top 10 experiences in London over kind of that, I think it was sort of May, June time last year. And walks tours featured heavily in my favourite experiences. So this episode, we thought we would talk about why we enjoy walks tours and what it is that we particularly like about them, and also just our experiences of the tours themselves, really. So we're going to be talking about a number of tours that we've taken. I will say that we have been guests of walks for these tours, but our views and opinions are completely our own. So what is it that we like about walks tours? So basically, for me, it's the fact that you get privileged VIP access to some events, don't you? For example, the Ceremony of the Keys.
Yeah, that's right. And the size of the groups are important, aren't they?
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, you've got the small groups. So I think maximum 20. We've been in smaller groups when we've done some tours as well.
And what I really enjoy is the guide takes the time to introduce themselves properly to the group before you walk straight off very quickly.
Yeah.
And introduce yourself to the other members of the party as well, which is important.
Yeah, that's true, yes. And we found that the guides are passionate, they're knowledgeable, they're friendly, and they're engaging storytellers, which is what you remember. Because, you know, we can all go on tours where we just get endless historical fact after fact after fact, but how much of that do you actually remember afterwards is, you know, probably of a moot point, because probably not a whole lot.
That's right. And the way that they can sort of engage on a personal level, which was, I found it astounding for every one of the guys that we've had.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, really, the ability as well to skip the queue, escape the crowd. So, you know, I've taken tours before. The Tower of London, I guess, the opening ceremony is a kind of obvious one, because you actually are in the Tower of London as it's open. So you're in there before anybody else.
That's right. And it's really important because people think, oh, I know where I want to go. I know a little bit about this, and you felt following every single stage, but there's one eye on those crown jewels and that queue outside.
Yes, that's absolutely true. And if you're there for the opening ceremony, you're obviously in there before everybody else. I remember doing a tour of Westminster Abbey last year, and we could skip the queue. So we went in via a side entrance, and therefore we didn't have to stand in the huge long queue, which you can get over the summer months and over public holidays and over obviously Christmas time, where it gets incredibly busy in London. So I don't want to really spend my vacation standing in line. It's not something that I really want to do with my time. So should we talk about some of our favourite tours that we've had with walks? So I guess really we should probably start with the Tower of London, because, as I say, it's like my enthusiasm for how much I absolutely love the Ceremony of the Keys is starting to become a bit legendary, I think. But anyway, let's talk about the opening ceremony. So both myself and Doug have taken the open ceremony tour, which has been, it's really interesting, isn't it, to be in the Tower of London at that time?
It is. It's a privileged thing to be able to, I think, get in there so early as well. You know, there's something for everybody at the Tower of London, and to be there on a lovely summer's day, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
And so, already said, you meet everybody else in the party as well, and you're walking through there when it's quiet and empty, and
everybody else is looking good. How are they going in the
And
Tower
how
of
they
London.
manage that, yes. Yeah.
So you go in the Tower of London and you actually get to witness the opening ceremony, which is, as it sounds, is the getting the keys and actually unlocking the Tower of London and letting everybody else in. So you get to see that ceremony. You can take pictures of that, and I have got pictures and videos of that ceremony. Actually, I've got an article which I wrote about our experiences of that particular tour. And then after that, because you're in first, you get in before the crowds, and there's thousands of people that go to the Tower of London. You go, as I say, to see the crown jewels before anybody else. So you get to, and I was joking with Charlie actually last week, is that we went on the Travelator a couple of times because you're on a moving walkway past the crown jewels, and because we're there before anybody else, we could go round and round, which a lot of us did, went round and round, and had a really good look at these amazing jewels. And
the crowd when we came out queuing up to see the crown jewels was incredible.
Yeah, it was already starting to get long. So it's, people want to see the crown jewels. And so the fact that you are in there, you've already seen this amazing ceremony, you've had some time to chat to a yeoman warder, and then you go and see the crown jewels. And then afterwards, your tour guide will take you on a tour of the Tower of London. So you get to learn a little bit about the Tower of London. You can't see everything. So the advantage is actually at the end of the tour, which I think was about 11-ish I finished, you stay in the Tower of London so you can explore more, because we didn't go into the White Tower during that tour. But you basically can stay in the Tower of London and explore to your heart's content. But you've obviously had the opening ceremony, you've seen the crown jewels, and you've had the guided tour.
It's actually so much to see and so much to take in. But the knowledge of the yeoman warders is astounding as well.
Oh, absolutely. Well, they've got to pass a kind of exam, don't they? And obviously the tour guides as well, they know their stuff. So that's really good. And then I guess, so that's the opening ceremony, which is very special. And then obviously my favourite is the ceremony of the keys, which I've now done twice. And Doug was lucky enough before Christmas to be able to join me on a tour as well.
That's right. I thoroughly enjoyed that. It's such contrast, and to be there on a separate occasion for the opening and then a separate occasion for the closing was very special.
It is, and you really feel that you're taking part in a historic event, which it is. It happened to, I think it's about 700 years now. Every single night, that ceremony takes place as it is. Now, that ceremony, you cannot take photos, you cannot take video, but you go into the Tower of London around about 8:30ish, I think it was. And I know you meet at 8:30, and then you meet your yeoman warder, who is a different yeoman warder each time. So, I mean, I've been twice and had 2 yeoman warders. I'd like to go, as I was saying to Charlie last week, I'd like to go enough times that I can meet all of them, because they're fascinating to talk to, and they're very different. Obviously got very different backgrounds, and they've got very different personalities, and they all have to learn a huge amount of information about the Tower of London. But it's just the fact that you can spend that time just talking to them, asking questions.
That's right. And you can see it's something special to them as well. You can see that they see it as a privilege to be part of that ceremony themselves.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. And just the fact, I think it was only about 10 or 11 of us before Christmas on the show. It was very small. So can you imagine you've got an hour and a half with a yeoman warder to ask them about their life in the Tower of London. Yeah. So you can ask them about the history. But you know what? It was things like finding out that the yeoman warder that we had was Pete, and he owns the new kitten that is at the Tower of London. So he was telling us all these stories about the kitten, and she'd got locked in a tower and they had to find her, and she's been a bit naughty, I think. So it was just really interesting to find out about that and about the pub, and just their normal life of living. Can you imagine living in the Tower of London? Well, these guys do, with their families.
That's right, with the families. That's the important thing, was sharing his story as well.
Yeah.
It's just incredible.
It's brilliant to learn about that. So, you're learning about the past history, but you're learning about what this living history is, what is happening there today. And then you get to actually see this amazing ceremony. So obviously the yeoman warder talks you through what you're going to see so you understand it.
That's right. And I have to say, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. During the Battle of the Keys and the challenges.
Yes. Well, we can't tell you too much.
No, can't say
Giving away too much.
Yes.
But yes, what you see, it's fantastic, and this is really a VIP tour. You are in there with the yeoman warder. So I went in the summer where it was daylight, it was light, and I also went in the winter where it was dark, and it was very atmospheric, I have to say, to be in the grounds of the Tower of London with not very many other people. It's a real privilege.
That's right, yeah.
And it's completely different to your experience of going during the day. So now, if you do the Ceremony of the Keys, it's different in that you don't get to a tour of the Tower of London itself. So I do recommend that if people want to do the Ceremony of the Keys, that they also consider just getting a ticket and going into the Tower of London during the day as well, so they get that experience. Yeah. But the Ceremony of the Keys is something, believe me, that you'll never forget. It really is historic. Your name gets written in a book.
You are part of history.
Yeah, you are part of history. This is just a fantastic experience that you can give, yourself and your family. And, I just love it. I know I can talk about it for ages because for me, there were so many special moments to it. But, I was really proud to be British. I was proud of the history, proud of being part of it and just listening to it. And Pete, our yeoman warder before Christmas, is from the same part of the world as me. So that was really nice as well, talking to him. So really, I can't just really kind of just say how much I just loved it.
No, I don't think we could undersell it. It was just fantastic.
So that's the Tower of London. And then some other tours that we've done have involved Westminster Abbey and also the House of Parliament. So Doug and I did the Westminster Abbey tour with the House of Parliament. So we did that in 2022, actually, we did that one. Yeah. That was in about June, July time. So again, that's a fantastic tour to do, isn't it?
It really is. It was, again, part of history. I mean, we know the Westminster Abbey, we know a little bit about it. I thought I knew a little bit about it, obviously not very much. and then the House of Parliament, which is obviously being British, is part of our life as well. And to actually walk in and walk through where, so many great people have been.
Yeah, absolutely. So think about the first part of that tour. You have the tour guide that takes you around Westminster Abbey and explains a lot of the history, because there is so much at Westminster Abbey. I mean, I've been on a few tours in Westminster Abbey and I learn something new every single time that I go. And after that tour, you get taken over to the House of Parliament and then handed over to a tour guide from the House of Parliament. Yeah. So they actually give you the official tour. And like Doug's saying, actually standing in the House of Commons and the House of Lords, it was quite incredible.
It was. And the knowledge that both separate tour guides had is just astounding. I wish I'd read a little bit more about Westminster. I'll be honest. I wish I read up a little bit, know what more to expect when I was there.
About Westminster Abbey?
In the Abbey, that's right.
Yeah.
And then for the House of Parliament, there's so much about it. You see it on TV and you think, oh, yes, I've seen that. And I recognise it. The different benches and the different...
different colours. Yeah, like you can't sit on the seats. So I have to say that. You're not allowed to sit on the seats.
No.
Pretend that you're an MP or Prime Minister. You're not allowed to do that.
You just feel history. in both the Abbey and the houses, you just feel part of history.
Yeah, absolutely. And I did a Westminster Abbey tour last summer. And again, that was interesting. So skipped the line, so it was brilliant. So we got in early. I had the guide take us around Westminster Abbey, and as I say, there's so much to Westminster Abbey. You really need a guide. I highly recommend, if you go to Westminster Abbey, that you have a guide, that you take a tour, because you will learn far, far more. There's so much there to see, history. So much there to learn about. For example, Poets' Corner, just looking at all the gravestones on the ground. You want to see who's there, or who's being recognised there. The Jubilee Galleries. So the tour that I did last year was Westminster Abbey with the Jubilee Galleries. So access to Jubilee Galleries is via Poets' Corner. So you can go upstairs or you can take a lift up. But we again had the guide who was able to explain, give us some time to have a look around the Jubilee Galleries, but answer all questions again and explain to us the importance of a lot of the artifacts that are actually up in that gallery. Now, you're not allowed to take photos up there, I will say.
That's right. And there's one thing that impressed me with the Westminster Abbey part was the fine balance that the tour guide had between time to explain and walk, and also time for you to be able to explore.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think that is important. And also because the questions that you come up with is I think, I didn't know that, or I want to know that. And, things that you don't think about. And also I remember there's a couple of things, just seeing the coronation chair after the coronation. It was because it was in June, so the chair was back there. And obviously the year before, when Doug and I had been, the coronation chair was there. But just knowing that there's graffiti on the coronation chair and stuff like that is quite interesting.
That's right. It really was. One other point I'd like to add about the tour guide was how easy it was to ask questions because the tour guide was amongst us. So when we were walking, he was happy to sort of talk to everyone, because not everybody wants to ask questions in front of the group.
Yeah.
So he was amongst us when we were looking around on our own. So he was actually coming over to individual people and just saying, how you going, and where you're from, and that sort of thing, and more questions, and because it's sometimes easier to ask questions on your own.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. So that's really good. So that they're both really good. So if you haven't got an interest in the House of Parliament, then obviously just doing something like the Westminster Abbey with the Jubilee galleries, I'd highly recommend including that. You can do that. If you have got an interest in the House of Parliament, we were actually talking before this recording saying actually there were quite a lot of British people in that tour as well, right, who did Westminster Abbey and then wanted to go over to the House of Parliament to kind of learn a little bit about the Parliament and see, the House of Commons. And I saw lots. Oh yes, and also the Great Hall. So it's a great way to immerse yourself in history. I always recommend anyway that having a guide just gives you so much more information and knowledge, but also can share stories that you wouldn't necessarily get if you use headphones. I'm not a great fan of having those headphones when you go around places.
It just totally enhances your whole experience by being part of the group.
Yeah, and I think so. And the thing is,
Walks delivers on that.
Yeah, they do 100%. And, those are the things that, leave you with memories. And actually, a friend of mine came on the Walks tour for the ceremony of the Keys last June. And Terry is still talking about that tour. She's talking to all her friends about that tour because, and she wasn't aware about that ceremony and absolutely loved it. Loved it. This is the sort of thing that you look back on in years past after your trip, after your vacation and go, those are the things that you remember. Right. Those are the special moments. And so, that is what we enjoy doing. So that is why this week I kind of wanted to follow up with the interview with Charlie last week to just kind of say that these are the things that we enjoy. We will remember. Standout moment for me is always going to be the ceremony of the Keys and actually the privilege of going into the chapel with the Yeoman Warder and just spending time in the chapel. I'll never, ever forget that. And what about you?
I just find it mind-blowing that you're part of a ceremony that's been going on for so many hundreds of years.
Yeah. And also, I guess, like we've just mentioned, the Great Hall at Westminster, because we were there a few months before the Queen passed away. And obviously, she was laid in state there. So we were able to kind of, we remembered that we'd been there, and it just meant such a lot because we weren't in the country after she passed away. So it was just really touching that we could kind of remember we'd actually stood in that hall. Yeah,
and we could relate to it. When you saw the pictures and the videos on the news broadcast, we were in that hall and we can sort of visualize.
Absolutely. So I will put links to the Walks tours in this week's show notes. So if you're interested in booking, do pop over to the show notes, which will be at uktravelplanning.com/episode 85. And then you can use those links to book any of the tours.
And I would definitely 100% recommend Walks.
Oh, absolutely. So really, I guess that just leaves me to say for this week, continue to listen to the podcast, continue with your UK travel planning, check out the websites, UK Travel Planning and London Travel Planning for lots of resources.
Happy UK travel planning.
Yeah. And also from me, as always, we end the podcast with the words, Happy UK Travel Planning.